that that person signed it. But that's the weak part. You can also encrypt the thing with the receiver's public key, and then you know who's going to be able to read it, which is fine. Symmetric or asymmetric encryption can be used there. SMIME is another standard used to sign and encrypt email, but this requires a certificate infrastructure. There are really only two ways to do it. You can do the main thing most people do, which is pay certificate authorities money, and then you trust them to hold the keys to the kingdom, and as long as they are trustworthy, it works. The alternative is to somehow have a friend of a friend vouch for people, and that's the web of trust. I think I might have that picture coming up. Yeah, maybe not. But there's that's what MIT did. MIT's system, because they hate everything commercial and want everything to be free, they made the web of trust where you can sign somebody else's key. You carry around floppies to conventions. You meet people you know. I know you're really this person, so I'll sign your key, and then people can trust me that I vouch for you. And then you can decide how many levels of trust you have in every person, and decide if they're 3 steps away from me, my friend, and his friend, sign for that guy, is that good enough or not? This is, as you can imagine, kind of ridiculous. This only works if you're a small club and you all kind of know each other, like serious security researchers maybe 10 years ago. But if you want to actually do shopping or communicate with people across national boundaries or anything, this is for the birds. But it's completely free and you don't trust anybody, and that's where this all started. You know, there's a huge religion basically at MIT. It's been around forever. It just started the whole movement of hacking and everything else, is that you don't trust the government, you don't trust the corporations, you don't trust anybody. You make everything yourself, you make everything free, you give it away, and you create mathematical systems that will make everything trustworthy even when you don't trust anybody. And they still cling to that. That's why Richard Stallman is basically the leader of this type of thought, and he says anybody that sells software for money is just morally wrong. Apple is garbage, Google is garbage, Microsoft garbage. Selling software for money is like slavery. It's wrong. Software needs to be free. It is philosophy. Exactly how you make a living is not clear. But anyway, all right. What's that? What?
Who said this?
It's Richard Stallman, professor at MIT. He's the leader of the GNU, the free software movement. And has this idea you should give everything away and that it's wrong to do anything else. MIT has always had that idea. Passwords are wrong because you're locking up information. You know, that's why the latest guy, Aaron, that guy that eventually killed himself, was just releasing all these proprietary documents because it should all be free. It's a very strong belief out there. Everything should be free. But they're losing. They had to close their Tor exit node. They were in Tor. MIT was a big contributor to Tor, and they finally closed their exit node because so much stuff on Tor is so hard to put up with. I mean, most of what goes on over Tor is child pornography and stolen copyrighted property. And sooner or later, any organization begins to wonder if they're really helping the world by running a Tor exit node. You are also making it possible for people to protest against their government and not get caught by oppressive regimes. So that's the good side, but there's a lot of bad side too. Anyway, so this guy, Phil Zimmerman, designed PGP, pretty good privacy, which is a system that used public keys to encrypt email. And I thought it was entertaining because when he did it, I was trying to do it too. But I was using an 8-bit processor, and I could not get the 100-digit prime numbers in any reasonable amount of time, and I just got bored and quit. He kept going and made the software work and got himself a world of trouble because he published it on the internet, and immediately the U.S. government charged him with treason and spent years trying to lock him up because the position of the U.S. government was that any encryption that the government cannot open is a military weapon. And at this time, Pentium processors leaving the United States were also treated as like munitions. And they didn't want it going to rogue countries because it could be used to do complicated encryption. And he had to go in court for years battling about this, and eventually they just dropped it. I think there came a point when reality came up. They observed, you know, there are Chinese mathematicians that have figured out PGP. There are Russian mathematicians that figured out PGP. You cannot make it illegal to be smart. You cannot stop other countries from having mathematicians. The secret is out, and you might as well give up trying to can it up. But he had to fight for a long time. And there are persistent rumors that he was in huge, scary threats from the government for years and years, and suddenly it all vanished. And the rumors are that he put a backdoor in PGP so the government could get in there. That's a project I've tried to sell to a student for years. Nobody's taken it yet. All you have to do is get 2 or 3 PGP versions. There are other versions, and run them with the same key on the same message, see if they're really the same. We can find out if there's a backdoor in PGP experimentally. Anyway, but PGP is the software he made, and then there's an open source version, GPG, which came out, which does the same thing, uses public key encryption for your email. And you can run it with certificate authorities, but you can also use the web of trust. So that's the game. here's what normally happens when you shop online. You request a secure session, you get a certificate, then your client creates a, then not shown here, you ask the third party, like VeriSign, is that really a good certificate? And if they say it is, then you create a symmetric key, encrypt it with the recipient's public key and send it up there. And now you send the rest of your session using that temporary private key to make everything fast. So you can catch all that stuff with Wireshark if you like. And you'll see it says a client hello, then you get a server hello, then you have a certificate come down, and then a key exchange, and then you can send your data. It's really a 7-step process. You have a TCP handshake before this. That's the game you go through. And in fact, let me catch one and talk about it because it's worth showing you the downgrade attack. Okay, so here's my Wi-Fi. Let's start catching there, and then let's go open a secure session like Gmail. Okay, now I have a secure session. I see the padlock, so it must have happened. Now there's an awful lot of action on this network because this is the City College Wireless Network and I can totally see every other student's traffic on the whole network, which is kind of rude. Let's find Gmail. Not that, I got to do edit. Should be able to do this moderately efficiently. Gmail. Find the string in the packet. All right, and this is a DNS query right here. There we are. Now, so I asked the DNS where Gmail is, here, then, and there's mail.google.com. Let's find Google. Might be too difficult to find it with all this junk in here. I was hoping to find the secure handshake. Well, it's looking pretty good. Here's TLS v1 application data. Let me find my IP address and filter just for me. That's one thing I can do to start out with. ifconfig. I am 147, 144, 200, 135. Okay. IP. There, IPv4. Address equals that. Doesn't listen to me. There it did. Good. Okay. Then okay. All right. Now apply. All right. Now I'm only seeing my traffic, and here's the Gmail, and that might make it a little easier. So, this is TCP. I'm looking for DNS. Here's DNS. All right. So I send out a DNS request. And here's the response telling me where Gmail is. And it will tell me down here, yeah, that I'm Gmail. And down here I see here's where it starts, client hello. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you. Now, here's the client hello. The client hello tells the server what I will take. I can speak TLS v1. Here's my content type. Here's my handshake protocols. Here's the cipher suites I have. This is what I wanted to show you. The client tells the server, I can speak 36 different encryption regimes, different kinds of TLS. I can do elliptic curves. I'm just great. I'm Chrome, so I can do everything. If I was IE5, you'd see a much shorter list, and it'd all be really weak. So I tell the server, here's the 53 kinds of encryption I can do. Then the server tells me which one we're going to use. There's going to be a server hello down here someplace. There's server hellos. Okay, fine. Here's some server hellos. So the server will now tell you what's going to happen. Here's the choice. Use this one. Notice how it's just one. I set it 36. It says use this one. The server makes its decision. So you have to configure your server with what encryptions it will accept. And this is one of the big weaknesses in the system. There was a test recently where they scanned all the HTTPS servers on the web to look for flaws, and something like 36% of them have old insecure protocols permitted because they just haven't been updated in a long time. I mean, people are always adding the new ones, and you don't take out the old ones because that means people with really old machines can't connect. So that's one common attack that works in a lot of systems is the downgrade attack. The server offers a secure and an insecure choice, and you trick it into making an insecure choice, and then you can hack into people's connections. Anyway, so when you do get to a secure site, for a long time they told everyone to look for the padlock, so a lot of criminals started putting padlocks on their phishing sites. So then some browsers take out the padlock, now some of them turn this green. Every browser sort of made a random, inconsistent decision how to warn people on an unsecure site. Microsoft did studies and other people did studies showing that 99% of users of the internet have no idea what a secure site is anyway. They don't know what that padlock means. They don't look at any of that. They just look down here, type in the name and password, and look for their email and hope for the best. So what works better is to warn people when things are not secure. Unfortunately, there's no way to know how secure things should be. So if you downgrade a secure site to an insecure site with a program like SSL strip, you will fool almost everybody. There's been talk for years about reputation systems to try to improve this. Nothing has been done yet, but there are some serious holes here. One of the reputation systems that would be nice is you should know who the certificate authority is for all major sites. So if Google has been using VeriSign for 10 years and suddenly Google is signed by China, your browser could just say, this doesn't look right. Even though technically it's a trusted authority and somebody signed it, just if it changed, it could warn you. If Google has been secure for a long time and suddenly it's insecure, it could warn you of that too. You know, it could at least warn you for like the top 100 sites with some kind of browser extension, but as far as I know, nobody has written that thing yet. Microsoft is close in that Microsoft, in Windows 8, every time you go with Internet Explorer to a website, it sends it up to Microsoft servers to see, is this known to be malicious? And if it is, it'll warn you. So that's close to it, their phishing filter. But just watching to see suspicious changes in certificate authorities is not anywhere yet. And by the way, there's a good reason for this. There is only, I think, 2 attacks I've ever heard of that actually involve making fake HTTPS pages in the real world. It accomplishes nothing for the criminals. Criminals just make totally insecure pages. Why would they bother with a fake certificate? Just have an insecure page, the user will see no warning, they'll stop there, you're fine. Fooling HTTPS is not impossible, but it accomplishes nothing for the criminal just yet. But we would like to be able to trust it, so we'd like it to be unfoolable. Anyway, hopefully you've got eye clickers. That's the problem, of course. The problem is there's 2 kinds of criminals, and this is what Michael Hyponen just explained to me. The criminals who just want money, yes, they just target the dumb people, so all you have to do is be a little bit smarter than them, and you're okay. This nation-state actors that really want in, those guys are really hard to stop, because they really want you. If somebody really wants you, you're toast. If they're motivated and trained, they can just try more nasty techniques until one of them works. And it turns out that the nation-state actors are in fact hacking small businesses. It's not just big businesses. A lot of small businesses are also being attacked. A lot of people always have reasons to think they're safe.
So is the government's response to that? How is that?
That's basically like war, right? We hope our government will say, well, our government is trying to figure out what to do about it. I mean, they can like remove China's most favored nation trade status, or imprison some Chinese spies here, not that we'll lose until they quit attacking us so much or something. They've been arguing for the last year or so. We're pretty committed to do something back, but we do, of course, attack them back. But that's not really solving the problem. Ultimately, you could start a war and start killing people, but it doesn't seem like it's worth that. So it's a good question. How do you make them quit being so mean? And right now we want cooperation out of them. We want them to lean on Korea. So it's probably not time to yell at them about copyright. At the same time, trying to get them to do you a favor. So on we go. It's tough. Anyway, so Alice is sending a message to Bob, and she encrypts it with AES. So what key does Bob use? All right. All over the place. Okay. Let's go through this in stages. What kind of encryption is AES? Symmetric encryption, right? That's as far as you have to go. It does not have a public or private key. It's a shared secret. You can only use AES if you have separately transmitted the key to the other person already. So that's shared secrets. Here's the key. I'll send you a message later with that key. All right. Which one of these will give you integrity but not confidentiality? All right. A digital signature, right, does provide that. Now, it also provides authenticity, which was not discussed here, but it does not give you confidentiality. You can sign something that is not encrypted, and is commonly done, because it's not a secret, but you do need to have a record made that you really signed it. So that's what signatures will do, and because they involve a hash, they also guarantee that it has not been altered. The process of verifying the signature, among other things, proves that the message has not been altered. So now Alice is signing an email that she sends to Bob. So what key does Bob use to verify the signature? All right. If Bob signed it, you prove it's right by using Bob's public key. Whoa. All over. Oh, no, excuse me, Alice. Alice signed it. Oh, good. You're right. Good. Glad to see it. You people are smarter than me. Alice signed it. So it's Alice's public key to prove Alice signed it. Good. Okay. Don't let me get away with anything. All right. So which one of these is generated fresh by your browser for every secure site you go to? That's the session key, used only for one session. Good, a popular answer. All right. And so Microsoft wants to ensure integrity of system files. They want to make sure that every time you boot up your machine, the operating system has not been changed. And they did this in Windows 8. All right. And it's hashing. This is how you ensure integrity. They actually have a full digital signature, but the important point for this purpose is hashing. They know the hash value of the kernel of the operating system. And if you try to boot up and that hash value is wrong, it will just give an error message and not start. Your machine is broken, so you can't rootkit Windows 8. At least, I haven't heard of anybody successfully rootkitting Windows 8 yet. This is a considerable barrier to stop rootkits. There's undoubtedly some way to get around it, but it does raise the bar on the attackers. So Alice is sending an email to Bob with GPG. So now what key does Bob use to read the message? All right. Bob has to read it with Bob's private key. The most popular answer is correct because that's what makes it secret. Bob is the only one that can read that mail with his private key. Anybody, doesn't matter who the sender is, anybody sending a secret to Bob sends it with his public key and Bob reads it with his private key. And GPG is public key encryption. The two techniques most common are PGP and GPG. PGP is pretty good privacy, and GPG is the imitation called GNU Privacy Guard. They both do the same thing.
That's where the chain of trust comes in?
You can run them with the chain of trust or with certificates. Originally, it was only the chain of trust, and he rapidly discovered that in the real world, everyone wants to pay for those certificates because they can do commercial transactions, and this trusting a friend of a friend stuff is for the birds. And so now they both allow you to do either one. How about this one? Is that a secure page? And boy, I tell you, I don't think I'm going to grade this one because it is possible to tell, but it is really unfriendly. Now, let's see what people said though. Okay, well, some people say no, and how do you people that say no? How can you tell? There's no padlock and there's no HTTPS, but how do you know there should be one in this browser? That's right. So right now you have to know that this is Chrome just by knowing how Chrome looks, and that's really nasty. And I tell you what's worse, a lot of web pages have a little pop-up box that doesn't even have this part of the page. And there is no way to tell if that is secure other than to open a command prompt and go to netstat and see what port it's on. And even that doesn't prove anything because you can put insecure pages on port 443. There's nothing to stop that. The only thing you could do is run Wireshark and look at the raw packets. So I mean, this is actually a pretty severe problem. In practice, you can tell it's not. If you know Chrome from experience, but if you're not experienced with the browser, you really don't know. There's no standard technique. It's irritating. Yeah.
Some websites like WordPress, you log in, the page is not secure, but the login is secure.
Yes, those are mixed pages. Those are terrible. Those are very dangerous. There are many attacks that work on those. If the whole page is not secure, you don't even know what server you're talking to. If the button is secure, however, this is commonly done by companies that don't care about phishing. They only want to provide the minimum to like obey the law. Banks did it for a long time. So if you went to the real bank webpage and logged in, your login passed through securely. It's totally trivial to make a completely copied page and steal you with phishing, but that's not the bank's problem because they didn't do that. So I mean, the question is, do you actually want to protect your users or you just want to dodge legal liability? But mixed mode pages are, they were very popular for a while. Now they're falling out of popularity. They're very dangerous. All right, so let's talk about PKI. The digital certificates are handled by this structure called the public key infrastructure. And this is a system of servers and protocols that are handing out those certificates and validating them. So you have to create the certificates, then you have to manage them, back them up, you have to store them, you have to revoke them when they go bad. If someone loses their private key, then they have to cancel that certificate because someone else can have it. And certificates do get stolen. There have been 2 cases in the last month of malware families that had signed code with stolen code signing keys. And by the way, although I'm not aware of any people that forge HTTPS sites for the purposes of phishing, it is quite common to sign malware so it'll run on the programs on the machines it goes to, because a lot of security solutions will not run unsigned programs, but they will run signed programs. So putting a valid signature on it makes it more effective. Anyway, so PKI is the public key infrastructure, and the idea here is that two people that don't know anything about each other can still communicate securely, like you and Gmail. And the ultimate thing is you have to trust the CAs. If the CAs were shown to be incompetent or insecure or malicious or bribable, then the whole system would fail, and all of those things have been proven. The problem is there are too many CAs. In the original days, there was only one. VeriSign was it, that's all. And then it spread out to others, and then they spread out to second and third derivatives with discount certificates until they got to sleazy companies that don't do anything right. So some of them are very bad. Probably the big ones are still reasonably reliable. But so, and we talked about this before, here's your trusted root certificate authorities, and you've got stuff in here like China's government that your browser is trusting, which is kind of odd these days. And, but that's the way it is. Of course, if you were to take that out, then you couldn't do any business with China. And I buy a lot of stuff from China, cheap electronics. Most of the stuff I'm getting is, of course, from China. All this stuff is made in China. So you don't want to stop trusting them, or you can't do business with Chinese websites. It's a problem. Anyway, but here's many of the examples. DigiNotar was the company that's dead completely. The Dutch government removed all trust from them. All the browser manufacturers took them out. They got totally hacked. They were shown to be owning the sleaziest outfit on earth. They didn't even have serial numbers on the certificates. So when they found out they got hacked, they said, how many certificates did they steal and which ones? They said, we don't even know. They had a flat infrastructure, no antivirus on the machines, no network segments, and I think like default passwords on them and everything. You know, it's just pathetic. The point is, if they're not ever inspected, there's nothing to stop some clown from just taking his garage, putting 3 machines in there and calling himself a CA and selling super cheap certificates. And it will just go on until they get hacked. So that got rid of them forever. Here's Komodo Hacker. This is the guy that did it. Komodo Hacker is Iranian, but he claims not to represent the government of Iran. He's just a patriotic, single Iranian hacker. That's what he says. No one knows that this is true. But he hacked a lot of people. He proved that he hacked Komodo first. Then he dumped a Mozilla certificate he found. Then he has a whole series of these in 2011, a whole series of messages from him as he hacked into certificate authority after certificate authority, and he said he had hacked 4 more and he wasn't going to tell you. And therefore, presumably, Iran has all these, and they can open HTTPS sessions by signing with them. So that's an issue. And by the way, the original fear was not this hacking. The original fear that led to all the PGP and chain of trust and everything was that a government will just coerce companies in their nation into handing over root certificates. And certainly the Chinese government can coerce their company to do it. And people argue, can you do that in America? You probably could not force an American company to hand over their secrets to the government with the force of law. But one of the things that made the WikiLeaks people so mad is that Lieberman, the senator, called Amazon and PayPal and a few other companies and said, we would like it as a favor if you block all business with WikiLeaks. And they did. So no credit cards can be used to donate to WikiLeaks anymore. And that was quite troubling, because then you're controlling that company when you don't actually have any legal right to control them. But we've already seen this. AT&T was the same. Before the 9/11 attack in 2011, the government contacted AT&T and said, how about you just give us all the phone network traffic and all the internet traffic on your entire network so we can just do whatever we want with it? And they said, yes, sir, and handed it over. It was completely illegal, but it was declared above reproach, declared above examination by first the Bush administration and then the Obama administration declared that this cannot be examined in court. You cannot ask the question whether this is legal because the evidence is all protected for reasons of national security, so you cannot ever protest this act. And they retroactively gave them immunity in addition. So anyway, this is what the original reason why people wanted to have a system that depended on trusting your friends and not trusting any company or the government. And that's certainly an issue. You don't need to hack into it if you're a nation. You can just take the certificates from the companies in your country, and then you can open somebody else's mail. Anyway, so that's trust model. You have to have a trust model somewhere, and the main trust model that's out there is hierarchical. You have a main certificate authority, it's the root, and if you're a large company, you'll then have child certificates as well, child certificate authorities, because you just have too much traffic to have one server handle the whole world. So now you have a trust chain. The root certificate authority gives a certificate to the intermediate certificate authorities, and they issue certificates to the child certificate authorities. And this is just like, you have a farmer with 1 million tons of wheat, and they sell it to someone who packages it up smaller and eventually put it in little bundles and sell it to Safeway in small quantities. And at each step, it's getting closer to the consumer, and it's getting less and less oversight and cheaper. So the alternative, like I mentioned, is the chain of trust. You can just get your friends to sign friends' keys, and XKCD got a whiff of this, which was, as usual, pretty good. So this is the problem with this system. You can go to a party and get drunk and sign somebody's key. And that will list that you're on their key. So this is the problem. I mean, I used to live in like shared rooming houses with bachelors, and if the roomies were okay, that's one thing. But when they brought their friends over, it got really bad. When they bring over the friends of their friends, then I would leave. I don't even want to live here anymore. So how far are you going to take this chain of trust? I mean, somebody I know, their friend signed it, and that person's friend signed it. So how much confidence do I have in this now? Anyway, so you can make self-signed certificates, by the way. You can make ones that do not go to a certificate authority at all. They're just signed by you. Now, when people use them, their browser will pop up and say, this was not signed by a trusted certificate authority. A lot of websites do this. Because they're just cheap and they don't feel like they're doing their certificate. And a large proportion, most people just ignore the warnings, but it is a thing to be aware of. You can also, by the way, set up your own certificate authority. It's very easy. You can put it on any server, and then nobody will trust it, but you can put it in the trusted list for your employees. And then your employees on company laptops can use an HTTPS connection for free to your company. It's probably not as secure as a real certificate authority, but it's a whole lot cheaper. And it's good enough if you're only trying to reach your employees. But your customers will get a browser warning if they try to shop at a site like that. So you're motivated to pay for a real certificate. So to do this, you buy a real certificate, which is not cheap at all. Like $300 a year is common or more. There are discount brokers, but a lot of them have gone out of business. So anyway, then you register your website. So there's a registration authority that ties it. And there you register your certificate, and there's a certificate authority that actually makes it and hands it to you. Now, if you lose control of the private key, your certificate is no longer accomplishing its purpose, and stuff encrypted with that public key can be read by somebody else. So then you need to cancel a certificate, like a stolen credit card. So there are many reasons this can happen. If the key is compromised, if the certificate authority itself is compromised, you've got a problem. For example, anything that ever came from DigiNotar is now untrustworthy. Yeah?
Is there any companies that got their certificate revoked?
Yes, 4 of them so far have gotten hacked, and it became public knowledge that they were hacked. And at least one of the companies was completely destroyed. The others had to revoke all those certificates from them getting hacked. And the other thing that's really common, by the way, is that you change the name of your company. And therefore, the old certificate is no good because you look for the old company name, and it'll pop up browser warnings all the time. Anyway, any of these things can happen when you're out of business and all that jazz. So there's a certificate revocation list. But this is one of the many dirty little secrets of security. There is no standard format that's actually used for certificate revocation lists. Unfortunately, the original system requires your browser to find the list on the server of the main CA that signed the thing, and most of those are unavailable and don't respond quickly enough. So what browsers really do is they try to find the certificate revocation list, and if it takes more than like 200 milliseconds, they just give up and let you go to the website anyway. And so most of the time, they don't actually look because it turned out to be too slow. The only exception is Chrome. I don't know if I got that here. Yeah, very great in there. So you're supposed to check the certificate authority every time you get a certificate to see if it's been revoked. And the two ways are certificate revocation list or the online certificate status protocol. Those are the two techniques. Neither of them work. So in practice, all browsers run on a fail open strategy. So when they try to see if it's revoked and they can't get an answer, they just let you in through anyway. Except for Chrome. Chrome solved this problem with a non-standard system. Chrome, there are not that many revoked certificates. So they just found them all and packaged it into an update and put it on your machine in Chrome. There's just a list of all the known revoked certificates, so you don't have to go ask somebody and wait too long. You just take the certificate's serial number, compare it to the known bad certificates, and you answer this question. Nobody does that with Chrome right now. So that's a useful thing to know. Yeah?
Is it possible for antivirus companies to do the same thing?
So they certainly could, but they would have to integrate with your browser. It is essentially like another layer of antivirus. They just list all the bad certificates. It's a very good solution, really. At least it seems that way to me. Of course, this also means if you wanted to be like this, I guess you could have malware that messes up that list. But anyway, that list might become a useful target. Yeah.
About the self-signed certificates?
Yeah.
What kind of interface protocols do you use
It-
are involved in that?
To resolve them, you just
Are involved in, like you want to set it up for your employees? Like
nothing. It's right there. It's easy to do. You just in your Microsoft operating system, when you set up a certificate server, it's just a role you add to your server, and you just go through a little wizard. And you can choose to make a self-signed certificate. You just click a button. So all it does is your machine makes up the random numbers, and when it says who signed this, you put yourself there. So the user browser will get the certificate, and then they'll want to verify it. They'll go back to the same server to verify it, and they'll warn you this is not kosher. But if you put yourself in the trusted certificate list, which you can just manually add at any browser, then they will not get a warning because they're trusted. For example, VeriSign can sign their own VeriSign certificate, and that's valid. And if you make your own certificate authority, you can sign it. So it requires so I don't know if I answered your question, but it's not difficult at all. It's all just a little bit of math to make these things. The math is not the weak spot. The weak spot is the humans and organizations you end up trusting that have an opportunity to betray you or be sloppy and drop important things on the floor. So then you can figure out what are you going to do if you lose the private key. You probably don't want to make too many backups and have them leaking all over the place, but you don't want to have no backups either. So one possibility is key escrow, where you put part of the key in each of two separate companies. So neither of them has the whole key, but if you lose it, you can contact both of them and get the pieces back. This is a fairly clever trick. There's another kind of key escrow that keeps coming back. There have been laws proposed, I think, every year for the last 10 or 15 years that the U.S. government should have every private key. Law enforcement wants this, so they can read everybody's encrypted stuff. Now, originally, he did it by recommending and sort of enforcing that you use insecure protocols, but that's not working. So now they want to force everyone to hand over the key to the government, which will keep it safe. That has not happened yet. It's probably best that does not happen because the government is the least secure organization. So if they have the keys, they'll be the target of hackers, and I don't think they can protect them, but it has come up again and again. And I don't know if you remember this, about a year ago, Obama announced that he was going to solve the problem that we all have too many passwords. He was going to have an official U.S. government sign-on system, and we'd use that to get in everything. He announced that, and then it just vanished because that was like too stupid for anyone to even do anything but laugh, but it was an idea. What's happened in practice is that is Facebook. Facebook is now the universal login for everything for all practical purposes. It's not the government, but pretty much everybody logs into Facebook and they log in everything else through Facebook. Anyway, so you can have a recovery agent who is a person who is able to recover your encryption keys. This is an important concept, and Microsoft had to go through several evolutions of this. In Server 2000, you could encrypt files with a system called EFS, Encrypting File Services, and the administrator could go in every encrypted file. They were the built-in recovery agents. Because the first thing that happens when you put a password on is you lock out legitimate users. They forget their password. First thing that happens when you turn on encryption is you lose your own files because you somehow lose the key. So this is the main business risk. So you have to have some other way in there. But what Microsoft discovered is that the administrator is not the right person here. Especially at a large company where you have roles and a lot of things at stake, the administrator is the person who's responsible to keep the machines working. But they are not really trusted with all the business decisions made at high levels, like whether we're going to merge, whether we're going to close this branch, what our new product line is going to be. So it doesn't really make sense for the administrator to be able to read all the encrypted documents. The only person that should be able to read all the encrypted documents is probably the CEO, the person that really is responsible for the whole company. So they separated it in later versions of Windows, and they have a separate account, the recovery agent, that you can configure that can go in these files. So you can decide at your company who should be the recovery agent. It's not necessarily equal to the system administrator, and certainly after all, the rogue system administrators, like San Francisco's rogue system administrator that hit the press, that locked everybody out of our systems a few years back, it is obvious that you cannot place total trust in your system administrator. So, and you shouldn't really. It's a different job. Yeah.
Quick question, because I was looking at UCSF and
Yeah.
there was two accounts. One of the account was under another password and username.
Yeah.
So it was a particular virus, so I had to delete it and recreate the account.
Yeah.
But the file, as administrator, I can see the files, but after I recover the file and put it in the file back, the user can't see it.
Right, that's correct. With Microsoft's EFS, if you encrypt it, the encryption key is created from your password, among other things. And if you forget your password and have it reset, you can never get in again. So There is, but you have to prepare it in advance. In Windows 2000, it was automatically the administrator could get in, but they took that out. Now, when you first configure EFS, you have to push out a policy that forces it to always add a second account to every encrypted file. And that second account is your recovery agent. But you have to do it yourself now. It's not automatic.
But if you start using the password for the same thing as an old account.
If you can, you still have to have the old, after you delete the account, you're toast. If you disable the account, then re-enable it and change the password back to the old password, you can get in. But if you made a new account, it has a different SID and it will not be recognized. That's why if you do delete an account in a Windows system, it will warn you, you probably should not delete an account. Just disable it. Because if you delete it, it has permanent cryptographic consequences. If you disable it, you stop people from using it, but if you realize you need it later, you can turn it back on. Of course, an image backup would solve all these problems. You'd have the old account information there to back up. Anyway, these are good questions. So I got a few more iClickers. All right, so which of these will let you make your own HTTPS server without paying anybody anything, at least if you use Linux? All right, those are self-signed certificates. Yep, you can make those anytime. All right, which of these has the responsibility for ensuring the safety of your online shopping packets? All right, if you're shopping online, you don't have just any certificate, you have to have one of those trusted routes, and they're the ultimate response. The people you're trusting most are your trusted routes. If there are untrusted certificate authorities out there, you won't be shopping with them anyway. And if they're secondary certificate authorities, they're not the ultimate repository trust. The people you trust are the ones on that list, the list that has China on it and VeriSign and Komodo and stuff. There's about 150 of them, and those are ultimately people you trust, although perhaps even a better answer would be the designer of your browser, who chose who to put in that list. You're ultimately trusting Google or Mozilla or Microsoft. So, you know, this, and if you think about this deeply, you get very troubled. This is what the cryptographic people do, like Moxie Marlin Spike is one of the, they take, you know, how does this work? Who are you really trusting and how could it go wrong? And the answers are really very disturbing. I mean, you're making strange decisions that aren't all that reasonable, are not really under your control, and they're not really necessarily the best decisions either. So there's a lot of argument now about replacing this whole system with something better. But no consensus has emerged. Moxie Marlin Spike has something he invented, and other people would say it's terrible, it'd be expensive, and it wouldn't be any better. Dan Kaminsky is pushing DNSSEC, which would replace all of HTTPS with DNSSEC, but everybody says that would be even more crazy and less under control and not make it any better, and on it goes. They're probably going to be fighting for years about this still, while we continue to ride the current leaking boat we're in, with just patches being thrown on it. Anyway, if you want to send encrypted email and you refuse to pay anybody anything, what technique should you use? These guys will do nothing for you without money. So the only thing you got is that chain of trust, friends of a friend. That's how you do it without paying any money. And without trusting any commercial entity. If you really are basically communist, you just hate money, anti-capitalist. I hate this whole thing where people will be good to get more money. You know, the whole point of CAs is you love capitalism. Their money flow comes from being trustworthy, therefore they have a financial incentive to be trustworthy, and we trust that. That's a fine American value, you know. We trust people to go for the maximum amount of money. But if you don't have that feeling, then, and they totally don't at MIT, so then you've got to come up with some alternative system. So which of these entities has a copy of your private key? All right, and the escrow service is what's holding that, just like escrow services hold your money. If you go to PayPal, for example, this is why so many people are ripped off on PayPal. I taught it 100 about 4 years ago, and part of this class, people would take pictures of themselves and put it on the website, and there was this one young lady in the class that totally refused to do it. She said, I can't have a picture of myself on the web. I said, why not? She said, well, I went to PayPal, and I bought a computer for $1,000. And they never sent me the computer, so to get the money back, I did the same thing to somebody else. So now they're after me, and I'm afraid people are going to, she's already like a felon, and she was like 17. Like, what the hell? Now she's afraid to post her pictures. And anyway, in case, this is ridiculous, but PayPal has no mercy and no sympathy for you because they offer an escrow service. For like 1% of the fee, they will hold the money. You order a computer, you give PayPal the money, PayPal takes the money, then they tell the guy at the computer, okay, I've got the money, send in the computer. You send in the computer, then they ask you, is it okay? And only if you say it's okay, then they give him the money. If that guy says the computer is no good, I cancel it, they send it back and give the money back to you. That's escrow. Somebody's holding it for you. And if you trust them, it makes you much safer. Anyway, that's what these guys do. The escrow service has it. And if you split it in half at 2 escrow services, then they can't use the key. But what the government wants is they want the whole key to be there so they can open your stuff. That is not yet required in America, but it may be at any moment. If your private key is stolen, where will your certificate go? All right, you will be on the glorious certificate revocation list. You have now your revoked certificate like a canceled credit card. And at least to people who are using Chrome will in fact be warned if they go to that page soon. And maybe the other browsers will catch up one of these days.